Okay, hello, you lovely nerds. Okay, so there's a productivity trap that I think a lot of people fall into. And I'll just say it because if you spend more time organizing your system than you spend doing the actual work, then I feel like the system has failed you because you basically just created a second job for yourself. And hey now, hey, hey now, this is what dreams are made of. Sorry, these voice notes are getting hopefully more fun by the day. I know I'm trying to do a mix of like deeply philosophical, but also very helpful voice notes at the same time. Sorry for the tangent. Okay, so yeah, I've been there. Literally I've built like elaborate Notion setups with databases and like linked views and color coded tags, and then literally spent an entire afternoon reorganizing the system instead of doing the research I was supposed to be doing. Right? Come on, dissertation productivity. And the tool itself, it just became a task, and for me, that's not really productivity. It just became procrastination with better aesthetics. I don't know. Don't be mad. So, when people ask me about Notion versus Obsidian, my first answer typically is always, the right tool is the one that gets you out of your way, right? And lets you do the thinking. So today I just want to, yeah, actually talk about what that actually looks like in practice. Because I mean, obviously, I use both of these tools every single day for different reasons, and I understand the difference uh, that these tools can make, and the influence it has on the kind of work that I am basically able to do every single day. So let me start with the most important thing I can tell you about this comparison because I think most people are just gonna like miss it. Notion and Obsidian are not competing for the same job. That's how I see it. Hear me now. So, like, they are designed for fundamentally different contexts. And if you understand that distinction, you stop trying to pick one and start thinking about how to use both quite well, right? So, Notion is internet native. It is built around the assumption that you are working with other people, that you need access to your work from multiple devices, and that your workspace needs to be shareable. When you create something in Notion, it lives on Notion servers. That is not a bug. That is literally the product. Like you want to be able to sync and you want multi-user access and you want the ability to give a teammate a link to a specific page or a database, right? The fact that you can open it on your phone, on the way to a meeting, in your laptop, at your desk, all of that is only possible because the data lives in the cloud, right? Obsidian is the opposite. Like when you create a note in Obsidian, it saves a plain text file directly on your device. Nothing is uploaded, right? Nothing syncs to a company server unless you specifically pay for that optional feature. Um, your knowledge base lives on your machine in a format that any text editor or any device can open forever, regardless of whether Obsidian as a company still exists. Please continue to exist. I love Obsidian. The founder's amazing. And I believe the founder's also on Threads. So those are two genuinely different philosophies about where your work should live. And neither is wrong. Like there are answers, these tools are answers to different questions, essentially, is what I'm saying. So the question is not which tool is better. I think the question is what kind of work are you doing and where does it need to live? Okay. So yeah, I run multiple companies and I have team members who like need access to shared documents, project timelines, client information, operational systems. Like Notion is where all that lives. And it is genuinely an excellent tool for that use case, right? The multi-user access is seamless. I can give different people different levels of access to different parts of the workspace. Someone can have view access to a project timeline without being able to edit the underlying database. Like you can have a collaborator have full edit access to a shared document without seeing anything else in the workplace. Like the permission structure is granular enough to be useful without being so complicated that it takes like I don't know, like an IT department to manage, right? The syncing works the way that it is supposed to. Like, if I update something on my laptop, it is updated everywhere. So if a team member makes a change, I can see it. There is no version control nightmare, no emailing documents back and forth, no wondering, whether the file you're looking at is the most recent one. Notion also has AI capabilities built in now. And for business operations, that's probably genuinely really useful. So like, meeting note takers and drafting project briefs and pulling information from a database are all tasks where having AI assistance inside your project management system actually like saves real time. So just want to like acknowledge that. For anything that needs to be collaborative, operational, and accessible from literally anywhere, Notion is going to be that tool for you, right? Because it's designed for that work and it does it quite well. Um, okay, so now let me tell you about the other kind of work. So the kind that does not need to be shared. And this is why I always talk about Obsidian in this way. Obsidian is the kind of tool that you use if you want a workspace that is deeply personal, highly sensitive, or just requires a level of depth and privacy that cloud based tools cannot provide, period. Right. So as a researcher, I work with certain data sets or certain categories of information that have very strict data protection requirements around them. So that information cannot be uploaded to a cloud service. It cannot be processed by an external AI system. Those are not preferences. Those are responsibilities I have as a researcher. So Obsidian is where that work lives because Obsidian is the only tool in my stack where I can be completely certain that nothing leaves my machine. Right? And I know obviously that is not a niche situation. Like there are so thousands of people who listen to this podcast every single week, right? So if you work in healthcare, law, finance, academic research, or any field that handles confidential information, you probably already know that not everything can go into a standard cloud tool with standard terms of service. Right. So local first tools like Obsidian exist precisely for that category of work. And more professionals, I think, should know about it, right? So beyond the privacy and compliance angle, there's something else that Obsidian does that Notion is not really designed to do. It supports the kind of thinking that happens before you know what you are building, right? So Notion is excellent for executing on a plan. And I think, in my opinion, Obsidian is excellent for forming a plan, right? So when I am doing deep research, I am not managing tasks or collaborating with a team. I am reading. I'm taking notes. I'm making connections between ideas, following threads I do not fully understand yet, and really building a personal knowledge base that reflects how I actually think. And Obsidian's linking system, where you can connect any note to any other note and see a visual map of how your ideas relate to each other is genuinely useful for that kind of work, in a way that Notion's database structure is just not, right? So the file formats in many ways matter too, right? Every note in Obsidian is a markdown file, .md, right? Which is plain text with simple formatting. And that means your notes are completely portable. So if Obsidian shut down tomorrow, please don't shut down. You would still have every single note perfectly readable, um, in a format that has existed for decades and will continue to exist, right? So you are not locked into anyone's proprietary system. And your knowledge base is yours in a way that is hard to like properly overstate. Like you own it. Like you download Obsidian, bam, create your vault. It is yours, right? Um, Now, here's where it gets interesting because Obsidian is not just a note-taking app, at least for me. It is the foundation of a much more integrated personal system. Um, and let me actually show you what I mean. So, if you have been following my local AI spiel all across social media, you know that I connect a local language model to my Obsidian knowledge base. So, let me just explain what that actually means in practice, without getting into the technical like particularities of it. A local language model is an AI that runs entirely on your device. So no data leaves your machine. When I connect that model to my Obsidian knowledge base, what I'm doing is giving the AI access to my notes, my project information, everything that I have stored locally. And the AI can then use that information to help me, like a personal assistant. The reason this matters is because you want clarity of information. You know how important it is for me and why I advocate for this so much, why I'm building a company around it. It is to protect your critical thinking. It is so important to make sure that you are ruthlessly getting rid of anything that stops you from thinking clearly, anything that stops you from reclaiming your attention and your focus. Like that is one of the most valuable things we have, our ability to think and to engage deeply with the world around us and with information around us, right? So, um, oftentimes, it's really good to make sure that you're being proactive about protecting my space and time to do so. Okay, sorry, another tangent. Um, where was I? Yeah, so I was talking about, like, essentially, like, yeah, when the local AI is answering a question or, um, just, I don't know, helping me think through a problem, it is drawing from my own knowledge base, not the general internet, not someone else's, data. It's drawing from my notes, my frameworks, my research. That makes that assistance genuinely personal in a way that generic AI assistants, like, just cannot be, right? Um, and I also use AI agents that are connected to the system to handle the overhead of project management. So reminders, follow-ups, updating my calendar, keeping track of what needs to happen when, all these different things are happening, that don't require my actual thinking, like, you know what I mean? Like, I have agents that handle that layer so that I do not have to, and this is just good from a project management perspective because once again, I'm sorry, if I have to manage the database, I just created more work for myself. I want to do work. I want to think. I do not want to manage the, overhead of having to do all of that. That is just personally just a waste of my time. Um, yeah, so essentially, this is a principle that I keep coming back to. The best use of AI is protecting your thinking time, not replacing your thinking. Um, and if I can automate the task of managing my productivity system, I get to spend that time on the work that actually requires my brain. That is the goal, right? And the key thing to understand about why this works with Obsidian specifically is that the local AI only knows what I have explicitly put into my knowledge base. So there's no ambiguity about where the information is coming from, right? There's no concern about, sensitive data being processed by an external system. The whole setup is contained, private, and under my control. Okay. Um, so one more thing about Obsidian that I do not see enough people talk about um, is the fact that it functions as, in many ways, like a resilience layer for everything else in your system. So obviously, like Notion, like any software has gone down before, right? And most cloud tools have, right? So when a cloud service has an outage, if all of your work lives there, you are stuck. Like you cannot access your notes, your project information, your research, and the work does not need to, like the work does not stop needing to be done just because the server somewhere is like having a bad day, right? That's what I'm trying to get at. Um, Obsidian now actually has like a Notion importer plugin, I believe. That means you can export content from Notion and bring it into Obsidian where it lives locally on your device. So I use this as like a backup system because my most important thinking, my research, my notes, those all already live in Obsidian. But the operational business stuff lives in Notion, where obviously it needs to be collaborative and accessible. Um, but obviously, it's important to back that up to Obsidian so that I always have a local copy. So if Notion like went down tomorrow, obviously don't want that to happen. I'd still have everything that matters most to me. And, I don't want to, you know, make anyone feel paranoid or anything like that. It's just good informational like data hygiene to make sure you have multiple backups, which I have made multiple YouTube videos about, by the way. Yeah. Remember the three copy rule, the archival principle. Um, okay. So, okay, let me close with the question I think is most important for everyone who's listening right now. It's not about which tool has more features or better design, in my opinion, but I think it's about which tool supports the kind of deep, independent thinking that, this whole show is actually about, right? So, Notion supports critical thinking in the context of execution, right? When you are taking a complex project from idea to completion, when you're managing multiple work streams, when you need to see how all the pieces of something connect at like an operational level, obviously, Notion helps you think clearly about structure and process, right? It externalizes the complexity of execution. So, like, your brain does not have to hold all of it at once, right? That is a real cognitive benefit, right? Um, Obsidian supports critical thinking in the context of formation when you are still figuring out what you think, when you are reading widely and taking notes and not yet sure which ideas are going to matter. We need to sit with uncertainty and let connections emerge over time. Obsidian is, in my opinion, the better environment, right? Like the linking system rewards that kind of associative, nonlinear thinking that produces original ideas. And the privacy of a fully local system means you can think honestly, without any ambient awareness that your notes might be read or processed by someone else's system. And that freedom matters for a lot of people. And I just want to acknowledge that. So this is the honest summary. Um, Notion is where I manage my work and my business. And Obsidian is where I do my thinking. And both are necessary. Like, neither is sufficient on its own. And the people who get the most out of both are the ones who stop trying to make like one tool do everything and instead build a system where each tool does exactly what it's best at. Right. So, as someone who thinks for a living, that distinction is not abstract to me. It is the difference between a day where I feel like I got somewhere intellectually and a day where I just like kept managing things around, preparing to do something, but not actually doing something, right? Um, so yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Notion is for collaboration, operational work, anything that needs to be accessible from anywhere by multiple people. Obsidian is great for individual thinking, sensitive research, private knowledge, and connecting a local AI ecosystem that keeps your most important intellectual work entirely under your control. So yeah, they're not competing. They're just both complementary systems that I think are great. And I think the productivity trap is when you once again spend more time on the system than on the actual work, right? The way out of that trap, in my opinion, hear me out, is just being ruthlessly clear about what each tool is for and refusing to let either of them become more complicated than the work requires. Okay. So if this episode gave you a clearer picture of, yeah, like where each tool belongs in your workflow, share it with someone who has been trying to decide between them, and let them know that they do not have to choose. Yeah, thanks for listening to these voice notes. Follow, subscribe, comment wherever you are listening. I would love to know what your experience has been with Notion or Obsidian, and talk to you in the next voice note.